Country Club.
What's that?
He said Indian Lake Country Club on my sleeve. All right, smiles, because I'm learning this thing goes live before it tells us that it's live. Oh, where are we? Got it.
There we are.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode number 12 of Merritt in the Morning.
I'm Jim Merritt.
He's Jim Merritt. I'm Brad Klopfenstein. We're your hosts. Today, our guest is John Ketzenberger. Let me share our Merritt in the Morning screen here. Maybe. There we go. See, we're fancy like this.
I like it.
See, this is a step back. John used to be on Indiana Week in Review. You guys actually had production people and a camera operator.
Studio.
Yeah,
Very casual.
we are casual. Our goal number one: can we get this to go out live?
I think we've met the goal.
We've met the goal.
Good.
So
Everything's gravy.
yep, we're coming to you live from Cafe Audrey's at beautiful Fort Harrison. Basically 56th and Post for the uninitiated. We're on Otis Avenue. They are open for breakfast and lunch 7 days a week. Dinner now Wednesdays through Saturdays. So,
And I just had breakfast and it was terrific.
what do you have?
I had eggs over easy. I had hash browns and I asked him to step on. And as well as a biscuit. It was very, very good. Homemade biscuit. It was terrific.
Nice. So thank you, Cafe Audrey's, for being our host. Beer and wine available, and that morphs into our next screen. We're also brought to you by Alpsfrau Beer, and it's a very big day here at Cafe Audrey's. Jim, guess what they sell here now? Alpsfrau Beer is now available at Cafe Audrey's, so ask for it by name. So let's get out of this screen. There we go. Stop the share. So, all right, let's buy it. Yeah. So here we are. So John, welcome.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
So your history, you started off life as a young cub reporter up in Auburn or in
Well, no, I'm from Auburn, but
Okay.
my first gig was in Columbus, Indiana.
at the Columbus Republic.
I worked at the Columbus Republic, yep.
Fabulous.
Nice.
Oh, it was a great gig.
And did you go to school for journalism?
I did,
Did you?
the Ball State University.
Oh,
Yeah.
Chirp, chirp.
That's
yeah,
right.
chirp, chirp.
Although we weren't doing that back when I was.
Really? Well, you're just going to the chug.
We were mostly going to the chug and, probably drinking Alpsfrau for all I know.
You know, that growing up in Auburn, when you think of Auburn, you think of cars.
Right, yeah.
And did you grow up with an appreciation of automobiles?
Yeah, I did. In fact, my parents still live about 2 blocks away from the museum up there. I remember when the museum was a place where they sold the old used junk. And then they renovated.
Used junk.
Yeah, they renovated, and the junk they got in there is not a lot nicer now. Some of it worth, millions, but my best friend, his dad was a car collector, and he had a 1936 Ford Beverly 810, I think, or 812 or whatever. It was a beautiful car, midnight blue with a beautiful interior. Oh gosh, he also had a 57 Thunderbird, a 64.5 Mustang convertible.
Did you ever get to drive any of these cars?
Just Mustang, because my best friend got that.
Mhm.
So we overhauled the motor and
And I'm fascinated by this because I enjoy cars, number one, but two, World War II memorabilia.
yeah.
And is there a concentration up there still?
Well,
There was a museum.
yeah, the family that did the auction up there, the Cruz family created this museum. And it's right off of the interstate, actually, right there in Auburn. And it is World War II memorabilia. They've got a Ford V8 section that they talk about the Ford V8 development and all those things. So it's a great place to be, great place to visit. But I never got to work for the Auburn Evening Star.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Well,
Yeah.
Columbus was a nice place.
Oh, I love Columbus. Columbus is a great town.
Yeah. And when I was breaking in the legislature, you were around.
I was.
There's
Yeah.
very few of us now that
That's
you can
true.
say that.
Were you the Statehouse reporter for the Columbus Republic?
No, the gig when I started covering the Statehouse, it was for the Fort Wayne Journal Gazette.
Okay,
I lived and worked here, but I covered it for the Fort Wayne
Right.
paper, and that's when I met Jim.
Mhm.
I started there, and my first session was 1991.
So same with me.
Yeah, so we broke in together.
Yeah, we did. And we were both close to the caucus chairman at that time, Potch Wheeler,
Yeah,
and who was from up in the neck of woods of Fort Wayne.
he was, yeah, absolutely.
What a wonderful man. And he had a sticker on his desk that something along the lines of somebody up in his district thought the Indianapolis Star was a strip club.
maybe. Times.
That just tells you that outside central Indiana, people have other things to do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a whole life out there.
There is a whole life out there.
Fort Wayne's a great town. Potch Wheeler was a great guy. There were some really, Brad Fox was from Rome City. And he was the budget specialist with Pat Kiley, who was the Ways and Means chairman. And Brad was terrific because he was your quintessential farm guy, right? I mean, he grew up and lived in a small town. His whole family lived there. And he became an expert on school funding and
that's hard to do.
oh my God,
That was,
you got it.
that was a puzzle.
Oh, and yeah, and at that time, it was an even bigger puzzle because, they had to figure out the formula, they had to figure out how to do it, and they didn't have the same kind of assistance from one assistance and two from the computer. I mean, of course they had computers, but they didn't have anything.
They didn't have data.
Yeah, and it was
We
just,
had the money following a child really wasn't established yet. And you had members that were kind of fighting for education money.
that's right. I remember when the runs would come out and people would grab that, wait a minute, that doesn't do enough for my school.
Is exactly right.
Yeah.
And so it's changed a lot today. It's all data, it's all computer driven,
It's very professionalized.
lots of factors.
Yeah, and that's not to be a knock on Brad at all, who
No.
unfortunately passed several years ago. Yeah, in fact, one of my biggest stories was when I found out he was retiring and I caught him at the Columbia Club at a reception. He said, I'll talk to you later. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
Straight shooter.
I didn't know him well, but state representatives and state senators that have gone through the system through the years. The people in the system, the people that are around the State House remember them, but they did their job and they went home and they lived in their community.
As it should be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that has changed for Congress.
Mhm.
The permanence of Washington and the tendency to be caught up in all of that.
Right. I'm really glad that the leaders that are in charge of the state legislature now still want to keep it a part-time legislature. It's a full-time job, but it's a part-time situation. And one of the reasons why they moved the state capital from Port into Indianapolis is so everybody could get there when they weren't out in their fields in planting.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, I think I agree with you completely about the part-time nature. You don't need a full-time legislature. You'll fill up that time with things that you don't really want to contemplate.
Yeah.
But I do think that we need to recognize that while we're still a big agriculture state, our cycles aren't dependent on that anymore.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some more balance in terms of the way people perceive
Yeah.
things, and I'd love to see less of the tension between central Indiana and the rest of the state.
Oh, yeah. We'll be
Because
from
it's a
Barry County.
symbiotic, it's a symbiotic relationship. We all need each other.
Yeah. What we make and we grow in this state in Marion County. I looked at it just recently and I think they provide about 35% of the general fund monies in tax money. So
Yeah.
it's that push and that pull.
That's
And I dealt with that for 3 years.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I
Mhm.
can't imagine what it's like in the caucus room.
Oh, it's nip and tuck. Nip and tuck. Klopp, he is a real success when it comes to environment. And I think we need to talk about that.
We do, because John's career morphed from being a reporter
I'm recovering.
very good. You were also involved with the Indianapolis Press Club.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
how I met you initially.
Yeah.
And then you now work for the Indiana Nature Conservancy as their government affairs director.
Yeah.
So
And there's a lot more to it than that. And
There
that's a
is.
big job.
So introduce our viewers to what is the Indiana Nature Conservancy? What is your mission? And then what is your job?
Okay. The Nature Conservancy was started in Indiana more than 60 years ago. We were, so the Nature Conservancy is a global organization. We operate in 70 countries, 5,000 people, 1,000 PhDs. We're a science-based organization promoting preservation, conservation of the environment for purpose of ensuring we all have a good place to live. So we're not going to go out and be radical. We're not going to go out and advocate for things that don't help people. The whole idea is that people and nature live in concert and benefit each other solely. So the Indiana chapter was begun in 1958 or something. It's a little more than 60 years old. And we have got 60 people in our operation. We have 5 offices, all 4 corners of the state and in central and in Indianapolis. We have protected more than 100,000 acres of land in the state. We work with all the other land trusts around the state to make sure that we conserve these areas so that they can be kept for and forever for the benefit of people. They're the areas where we have biological diversity, where we want to protect interesting or important areas. We're not out competing with farmers for farmland. And in fact, we work with farmers a lot because as a conservation organization, we feel like it's our responsibility then to work with farmers to ensure that, for instance, the soil that they depend on stays on their land and then is enriched by their practices so that they have better soil and then more soil. So we try to work in partnership with all those groups. I've been tasked with working for government relations. So I work with my colleagues in the national operation for better relations in Congress, and we were helpful in the Farm Bill. We're right in the middle of the Farm Bill preparation now. There's a large conservation title there. We work on that. We work for Recovering America's Wildlife Act is currently something we're working for. But mostly I work in the General Assembly. I try to work with state lawmakers to convince them that it makes sense to do these conservation projects and that they should invest in that. Because the nature, as we saw during the pandemic, nature became very important to people, and rightly so, and understandably so. And so we want to help them understand that by investing in nature, you create an atmosphere where you have an amenity. Nature's not to consume, nature is to, for our benefit, but we also have to steward that. And so that's what I do, right? I try to help them understand that. Funding for conservation, land operations, funding for clean water, those kinds of things.
So I know some of the land, so like the Nature Conservancy does buy land and then puts it into a trust. Typically that land, I think, is adjacent to potentially state parks. I know that you've got some property next to Jasper Pulaski up in Northwest Indiana. You bought an oxbow on the Wabash River where it flooded and was cut off from the rest of the universe. And so you guys invest your money into properties like that, so they are then maintained in perpetuity.
Right. You mentioned that oxbow, and what happens when the river is constantly changing in its direction, and because it changed, it moved, and that oxbow was there, and there's a lake. It creates a lake. Well, what we've learned and what we know is that those lakes are often very biodiverse, and they are completely different than a lot of the things around them. So if we buy those areas and keep them, because you can't farm them, you can't develop them, they're way too wet. And so if you put them into the trust, then it's there for people to study. It's there for people to come and enjoy, walk through parks or trails and that kind of thing. And then it's just kept for the benefit of everybody. And you're right. A lot of our acquisitions are done in concert with the state Department of Natural Resources or the federal Parks and Forest Service or other land trusts that operate in particular areas across Indiana. So it's coordinated. there is a purpose. And again, it's not done to compete with anybody. It's done to ensure that these areas that are naturally important are then kept for the benefit of everybody.
Where's your favorite place in Indiana?
Oh, I don't know. I can't tell you just one. There are beautiful places. You
Give us
mentioned
two.
yes.
Bigfoot two.
Well, I'll tell you, I visited
Does it
places.
start with a goose? The word goose.
If you're leading me to Goose Pond, I will accept that because that is.
Beautiful place.
Well, and the thing about that, I think it really demonstrates what the Nature Conservancy, DNR, and others are trying to do. Goose Pond is his former farmland. The owner of it was thousands of acres, decided he didn't want to do that anymore and decided he wanted to conserve it. And so all of the drainage that had been put in and created, the conditions for farming was removed. And so you've got thousands and thousands of acres now in south, I guess it's kind of southwest of here a little bit,
Right.
where over the last 10 years, it's become a flyway for birds. It's become this beautiful natural area. And the thing is, I love about it, it's kind of down in a little valley.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure Mitch Daniels, in his administration, started that, as I recall.
they did. They were
And
major champions. of
Yeah,
that.
they deserve a lot of credit.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
For the creation of that, along with lots of different parties, but it's not every Republican is anti-environment. Right.
Well, to John's earlier point, my understanding on that property is when he says that they're not competing with farmers, it was poor farm ground. It was low production, it was swampy.
Yeah.
And like you said, they already had to drain it and with marginal success, so.
And it cost them a fortune.
Yeah.
To put that infrastructure in, those already thin margins of agriculture evaporated. And over time, they recognized this and wanted to do this. So that's a case where opportunity meets initiative and you come together and you change the world. I mean, that area, you drive through it, you don't recognize it right away because it's not like your typical state park. You're driving through it, and then all of a sudden you see birds that you don't normally see in Indiana. And you see lots of them. And not only are there birds, there's the insects that come along with all of that. There's the flora and the fauna that come along with all of that. You mentioned, I'm going to tout Nature Conservancy's horn a little bit here. Another one of my favorite places is an area called Kankakee Sand.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that is an area on US 41 in Newton County near Morocco. It's just west of Jasper-Pulaski State Park, where all of the Sandhill Plains come. And so 25 years ago, that was farmland. 125 years ago, that was a lake. It was a shallow lake. It was called the Everglades of the North. It was teeming, biologically rich. It was so wonderful that people would come here from all over the world to hunt because the number of species that were available, the sheer volume. I mean, it was amazing. Well, they wanted to farm it, so they drained it all away. And they found out that it was sand. It's hard to grow things in sand. Why? So they did that for 60, 70 years. 25 years ago, we bought the acreage, 8,400 acres. And then we replanted it to prairie. And we did that with native seed that we harvested on the site, cultivated, and over 25 years planted 600 plus species of land out there, or of plants out there. And then to help manage it, we brought in a herd of bison. These are bison from Wind Cave. They are pure bison. And we've got about 120 of them out there now. And we participate now in an intertribal council so that every year, 20, 25 are shipped off to, in the case this year, to a tribe in northern Wisconsin to help seed their herd. And so we've reintroduced bison to the landscape, and it's all done to keep this area enriched and as an example of what was there.
Nice.
Klopp, where are we?
Let me reset for you, Jim. We Well, first, you're watching Merritt in the Morning with Jim Merritt and Brad
I should have said,
Klopfenstein.
who are we?
Who are we? Well, that's us. He's Merritt, I'm just the guy.
Well, you're
We were-
flop, man.
Yeah, I'm Klopp,
Merritt
exactly.
Klopf in the morning.
And we are with John Ketzenberger of the Indiana Nature Conservancy. We are brought to you by Alpsbrow Beer. Ask for it by name and now also ask for it at Cafe Audrey's at beautiful Port Harrison. You can get it there. Here, you can actually get it lots of places.
Yeah.
So-
You've done a good job of distribution.
Yep, well, thank you. So, and as you can see, Cafe Audrey's is gorgeous.
And work hard, be nice.
If you do nothing else today, do those two things and it's gonna be a good day.
A lot better place.
So, all right, so John, let's talk politics for a little bit. Well, your career, obviously,
Let's back up a little bit. Let's
Okay.
finish.
okay, we'll finish with
This
the,
last session of the General Assembly, John Ketzenberger, who is obviously in charge of government relations among a lot of other things, I'm sure, his organization was very successful in having the Indiana General Assembly recognize the value of him and his organization. And I didn't want to let today go by without talking about the Indiana General Assembly, which is a supermajority run by a supermajority of Republicans that are actually recognizing that our environment and our conservancy, our nature of the state of Indiana is very, very important. And we were talking about the amenities, but as well as the next General Assembly in the 10 from now, they have set a pattern where the environment is very important. And Republicans are painted with a brush so many times because we don't really know how to talk about the environment and the importance of it. But talk about that journey, because you didn't get $10 million overnight.
there's a $6 billion surplus. I know John's not greedy, so you started off by asking for $3 billion, I assume.
Yeah, you always ask high, right?
Yeah.
You start high. No, we, and I have to say, it was part of a coalition of people who have the same interests that Nature Conservancy does. And I think your point is well taken, Jim, about people's perceptions, right? If you ask them about the environment, many of them will probably not think too much about it or think, well, that's fine. We need to do the things that we need to do and nature will take care of itself. That's not always true. But people forget that the Environmental Protection Act was passed under Republican legislation or administration in the 1970s. The first
Clean water.
Clean Water Act was
Clean air.
passed. They're all 50 years old. And what does that coincide with? The Nixon administration. I mean, the first administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency was Bill Ruckelshaus.
Hoosier.
A Hoosier. We recognize when Bill died, his family had been involved with the Nature Conservancy. Jim Strickland was a trustee. We recognized him with a monument at the beginning of one of our trails over in Greens Bluff, west of here a little bit. So you're right, Jim. People have perceptions about all kinds of politicians, right? Yeah. My experience in working with you and Brad and many others over the years is that we're people first. And we all have wants and desires. And it's my job to help people understand that nature transcends political parties. That political parties can understand and can act in the interest of nature, which then benefits their constituents. I try to help people understand that investing in nature by putting modest amounts of money into nature, you can build a better environment for us, and you can count on it. The places Indiana 100+ years ago started the state park system here. We were among the first states to enact that kind of an idea. The first parks that we built were Turkey Run and McCormick's Creek over along Sugar Creek. Those are among the most beautiful places in the Midwest. And they're there for everybody to enjoy for the price of whatever it takes to get into I'll tell you, one of the best deals in Indiana, the $50 annual pass to get into the state parks. Buy it.
Every year I will buy the $100 deal that they offer just before Christmas that gets you the state park pass, a $50 gift card to either the inns or you can just spend it at the state parks. And it also gets you a subscription to the DNR magazine,
Outdoor Indiana,
Indiana.
which is a beautiful,
Yeah.
well done
Oh, yeah, the
magazine.
photography.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. But anyway, I think the whole point, Jim, and thank you for the opportunity, is that it's good to invest in the state. It benefits the economic development, it benefits the life, the benefits and amenities that people have to enjoy. And so that's our message to the legislature, and it's been receptive. We were fortunate to get that funding. It was a long time coming. The last time the legislature did that was when you were in the legislature.
It's funny to go on that long.
In 2010. And so,
2010.
yeah, it was 2010, well, actually 2009, the budget, but anyway, we are pleased that we've had that success and pleased that the General Assembly is open to hearing what we have to say, and we're happy to work with them.
Well, our brothers, Boss Hog.
Boss Hog of Liberty.
Yeah, when we went over there and we're on the podcast, we were learning how to do this, and we're still learning how to.
Yeah.
And they talked ad nauseum about camping out.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big part of their lives, and how much it's improved and how much they love nature. And so every day you learn something about Indiana, and I'm just pleased that we're able to put a real spotlight on today.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. You do good work, and I hear that you have a good committee chair.
I do. I have a committee chair who tells a great story.
Yes,
And she is diligent. I think she's related to you.
she is. It's my sister.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
and I
right.
can see her being good at that because she's not good at taking no for an answer, and she will argue you until you give up. So,
When back in '91, when we both broke in to the Statehouse, one thing that happened early on was that Fort Benjamin Harrison
Yeah,
was going to be closed.
right.
And there was a lot of harem scarum. There was a lot of chaos about how we were going to reuse it.
mhm.
And there's a lot of shouting at me. And it's turned out to be just an incredible diamond in the rough. And if I could have asked for a Senate district that had the amenities that the fort has, including Cafe Audrey, but the idea of having a wonderful golf course as well as being a state park, it's just a lot of times when I was growing up, members of Congress love to have post offices and have those post offices named after them. Then we went to the idea of having an Ivy Tech campus in our district. Well, in this district that Senator Walker represents now, you have everything, including a library and as well as an Ivy Tech, state park, great golf course. It's just a great place.
So obviously I run the Chamber of Commerce. Imagine how easy my elevator pitch is when I say, let's come to Lawrence. Where else are you going to find a historic downtown with room to grow, the walking distance to a 1,700-acre state park that has a championship caliber golf course that is also walking distance? It's amazing there's not more people just beating a path to our door here.
A lot of things to shout about.
There are.
I'm deciding because you set yourself up so well for me to knock you down, but I'm not going to. No, what I mean is I could have teased you a little bit, but you're absolutely right. I mean, this is, I remember those days and they were scary. It was interesting because when the Iraq War began in 1991, I came out here and there were tanks on 52nd Street or 56th Street by the entrance.
Really?
It was still a base. I mean,
Yeah.
and they put them out there. It was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But then within 5 years, the BRAC process had gone through and they had decommissioned it. And it's a testament to the work that you and so many others did, because that was a big bipartisan effort too. It's
Had to
like,
be.
we gotta make some lemonade here
Mhm.
and,
Well, there were 2,800 jobs. in
I know.
Illinois.
right,
And that was another factor.
that's right.
And the largest employer in Lawrence.
And one of the largest employers in the entire county.
Mhm.
So I think the work that was done is indicative of what can happen when people understand that there's a mutual interest, right? And it's giving you something to sell.
It has.
And it's a wonderful amenity. I mean, no, it's not an easy sell. Nothing is an easy sell, but you've got an elevator pitch that writes itself because of all the things that you mentioned and then some. But I've heard stories about that golf course in the military. People would come here from the military, people would pull just to play the golf course. It's a Pete Dye, right?
Pete Dye did the redesign of it. So obviously I think they built it early on when this is a base. I don't know if it predates World War II or not, but I know that.
It was
some
a
of the-
long time ago.
Yeah,
And it was it was well known in the military for its.
I think they made it easier allegedly, which right now, I don't know if you're a golfer or not, but if you play it, you think you're a good golfer, that will make you feel bad about yourself.
You walk away frustrated.
Yeah.
That's how I feel every time I go to the golf course.
So, John, pivoting to your career, so how intentional was it that you went to the Columbus Republic and then you were with the Fort Wayne Journal Gazette? Did these opportunities present themselves? Did you chase after them? Obviously, you were on the press club board, you were on Indiana Week in Review. And then you ended up with the Indy Star and Indianapolis Business Journal. So your career, how did you meander your way through that? Is that what you wanted? And did you expect to end up here?
Well, I knew I wanted to be a reporter.
Okay.
I knew that from the second grade. And I ended up getting to work for the paper that I read as a kid, right?
Mhm.
That was important to me. So yeah, I wanted to be a reporter, but it was one of those classic deals. I got that job. I was fortunate to get that job right out of college. I parlayed that into another and another and another, and finally I ended up at the Statehouse. And when I started at the Statehouse, I didn't have a lot of experience. I needed a lot
We
of
were both
seasoning.
very young.
Yeah, it's a challenge. But there were a lot of good people. I was able to work with a lot of good people, many of whom I still call friends. And, you get through. About 2 or 3 years after I've been at the Statehouse, Jim Shella asked me to be a substitute on Week in Review. That was a big moment for me in my career, really raised my profile and my visibility in the whole world. And then, if you're a reporter, you're an inquisitive person. So you just ask a lot of questions. You'll learn a lot of things over time. And I pursued opportunities as they arose. But to answer your question, this is not what I had envisioned when I was, 18 starting school at Deep Ball State University. I've been very fortunate. I get a chance to talk to people like you and many others
And 500 others.
and 500 other people, or 50 people, or 5 people. It doesn't matter. It's for somebody who was born and raised in Indiana, who loves Indiana, who can't imagine being anywhere else. It's been a real privilege to be able to be in this kind of a position where I get to participate in the life of Indiana. And so, I've been pretty fortunate. I've had a couple of breaks along the way. Mess up a few breaks along the way.
We all do.
And I find myself, where we are today and grateful for it.
Thought he's done well at every stop on the way.
He has. Well respected. He's a nice guy. I mean, that's why I wanted to have him on our show. So, yes,
He fits.
so you've had 30 plus years now of watching politics, reporting on politics, the legislature. How have things changed just from your perspective in those 30 years?
Well, lots. I mean, everybody knows about the changes wrought by social media and all of those things. So I won't even worry about that. I think the one thing that's changed the most, and I'll be interested to see what you think about this. When I started, I could walk out on the floor of the Senate. I could talk to anybody I wanted to. They would talk to me. They would answer my questions if they could. They would tell me to get lost if they couldn't. And
In a nice way.
Right, yeah. Oh, I gotta go caucus.
Usually over a cigarette.
They were still smoking on the floor then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the pro tem at the time was a pipe smoker and he wasn't gonna stop that by golly. He eventually did, but yeah, I think the thing that has changed is the collegiality, right? The sense of mutual purpose. I remember when the Senate was 26-24 Republican, right? And there was this real sense that the Democrats had a shot to get the majority, and this is when Evan Bayh was governor, the House was Democrat. And so there was a sense that they were going to be able to do that. Well, the Republicans worked very hard. And they extended, I think he got up to 30, 31, something like that. And Potchwheeler was the caucus chair. They went over to the Democrats caucus and got their chairs and brought them back. But I remember him telling me at the time, he didn't want any more, that was enough. Because there's a fine line, and this is not well understood in the general public about legislative world. If you have too few, you get nothing done. If you have too many, you probably get stuff done, but it's not necessarily in the broader interest of a lot of people. There's a fine line, and it's when you have a 4 or 5 seat majority. You have to keep everybody in line. You have to listen to people. You have to accommodate the other side. You have to bring all of these things together. And I think you end up with better outcomes, and you end up with a legislature that has a mutual respect.
I couldn't agree more. I don't watch the legislature. Honestly, when streaming, I don't go to the Statehouse. But during the late part of the special session this last year, I was watching it stream live, and I heard words going back and forth in the chamber between members in the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, and they weren't nice.
Yeah.
And I think that really drives your point home that we have lost that kindness and that the charm and the order and the generosity, the grace of politics, and it's really been demonstrated in the Indiana Senate. And in some of the conversations that the members would have, debates at the mic between the two parties, or if someone would bring a bill from the Republican Party to the microphone, explain the bill, and then the Democrat Party member, somebody comes up and disputes it, debates it, and then the Republican member doesn't go up and clean up, and if there's a mistake or there's offering that they disagree with, they just go to a vote. Right. And so I worry about debate. I worry about that collegial mindset, and the idea of the Indiana Senate being a place of order, and as well as there was a massive amount of respect. Yeah. And let's hope that comes back. But it's important. It's very important for the Republican Party and the Indiana General Assembly to treat their colleagues well.
And not just to do it in a superficial sense, to have a genuine sense of respect for each other, because good ideas don't know party labels. Right. And, the idea had been, and now look, it's always been partisan, and it's always been an attempt. You want to have the levers of power, no doubt about it. So that's part of it. But when the election's over, it should be over. What has creeped into the General Assembly over time is what has, I think, really harmed the Congress, and that is setting things up for the next election. Legislation becomes a vehicle for the points that they'll make in the next election, as opposed to solving a problem that somebody has, somebody recognizes. And so as a result, the problems continue to multiply And the animosity just gets worse. And then you end up with those situations where people show a blatant lack of respect because they think that everybody owes them respect. They don't recognize that it's earned, that their actions, their words, their deeds are what causes that respect to flow their way. So,
Well, I've talked about this on this program before, but I think it bears repeating, the bitterness. And when I would, it didn't happen in the beginning because we didn't have email. But if I would get a bad phone call from a constituent, or I'd get a letter that wasn't very nice, or if I get an email, I got 23 emails about an environmental bill that I believe that was misrepresented to these constituents of mine. And what I do is I print the email or I'd get the letter and I would stop on my way home from work at their home and talk to them about this. And there are a lot of people out there that think that they're automatrons at the Statehouse or at Washington, and you just push a button and it goes out to the ether and that individual won't read it.
right,
Won't see it.
right.
And so more times than not, and I did this over 30 years, I probably did it 60 times, maybe a couple times a year. And when I would knock on the door and the person would come to the door and I said, "Are you such and such?" And she goes, "Yes." I said, "Well, my name is Jim Merritt. I'm your state senator. And you sent me this message and somehow, or you called me." And I said, "Well, can we sit down and talk about this? You seem pretty, bent about this." And a lot of times they would just kind of back, like that sort of thing. And so, so you put a personal. I think we've lost some of the personal face-to-face conversations that are necessary for not only the representative in the Senate, and the senator and the representative, but as well as the constituent.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of the coarsening of the process, right? And that's a sign of the deterioration. If I sit there and think I can just blast away and say something terrible about somebody and do it with immunity, then I'm going to continue to do that because it makes me feel like I'm powerful or something. And really, that's not productive. And I like your approach. I think that meeting with people on their terms is the best way to ensure that you come with an outcome that benefits the most people. That's what's lost. It's like, well, how's this going to affect me? I don't care how it affects anybody else. How's it going to affect me? And if it's good for me, then I'll be for it. If I think it's bad for me, I'll be against it. Well, the world doesn't work that way.
Right.
And then the longer that we try to bend the world to our will in that regard, the worse off we're going to be.
Now, you covered the legislature, specifically the House, when it was 50-50.
Yeah.
How did they make that work then, and can they make that work now?
Well, that's a good question. I'll ask that. I don't know.
They'd have to make it work.
Yeah,
they'd
it's very difficult.
But it would be different than what way that came up. They came up with the system called stereo speakers. So you had a Republican speaker and you had a Democrat speaker. And so you had co-chairs of all the committees. You had equal membership on all the committees. And one day the Democrat would lead and one day the Republican would lead. And then they'd work. And actually, now I'm sure that if you ask Paul Manweiler or Mike Phillips about that, they were the two speakers at the time, they might have a different view of things. But from my perspective, it enforced what we were just talking about. They couldn't do anything without the other side. They had to have.
It was a very productive session, in fact.
Yes. And so, and then when the majority went to the Democrats, it was only 2 seats. It was 51 or 52, and then never got more than 54 or 55. And I think that's good. I think that when it's divided like that, it enforces what we've just been talking about. And you have to recognize the other side. There's this notion that if you had an argument with somebody, you always wanted to give them an out, give them a chance to say, okay, I got something out of all of this, and be able to take it back and say, yeah, I disagree with some of these things, but look what it did for, whatever. All of that's lost.
So when it was 26-24, I can guarantee you that the Republicans never wavered. They had 26 votes because Frank O'Bannon was the lieutenant governor, presiding officer of the Senate. And we actually had to have 26 votes coming out of that caucus room. And so it was a really interesting time. I think that was my first session.
Yeah,
1991.
yeah.
And we went to special session.
And then you did it in 93 as well.
Yeah.
Those had some turbulent
After
times.
91 and 93, my family company, my dad said, you know, we're going to have to rethink this. If you continue to go to special session.
That's right, because I need you, man. I need you.
I went to June 30, if you
I
recall,
do recall. That was
when it would ordinarily finish up at April 29.
that's
And so
exactly right.
people needed to be back in their homes and their businesses. But it's been a great day. I'm very appreciative of you spending some time with us. And like I said, John, you've succeeded in everything that you've done. And this latest employment career opportunity that you've had, just watching it from afar, I know how important, number one, the environment is, but two, Republicans have to work on it almost double to make people aware that we care about it. But three, having the success of funding from the state of Indiana in such a large fashion of $10 million is just an incredible success. And that's why we wanted to have you on today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. It's a lot of fun to see both of you. It's always great to talk about these things and.
I'm
hopefully
sure
do it
Mitch
again.
Daniels is going to love hearing about Goose Pond.
Well, he should. I
He
tell
should,
you,
he ought to be very proud of it.
we did a thing a while ago, it's been several years now, to recognize that work. And he came, and as you know, he doesn't do that very
Oh,
often.
no,
But
he's
this was a
well sought after individual.
yeah, and he did a lot for the environment. And it was before my time with the Nature Conservancy, but I know that he looked to us and we looked to him, and it produced some really spectacular results.
Well, John Ketzenberger, thank you very much for being our guest today. Thank you all who've been watching on Facebook Live. You've been watching Merritt in the Morning. Come to you live every other Thursday from Cafe Audrey's at beautiful Fort Harrison. Open for breakfast and lunch 7 days a week. Open for dinner Wednesdays through Saturdays. And while you're here for dinner, be sure to order an Alps Proud beer. Available at fine retailers and a couple that aren't so fine, but we'll take them anyhow. So, so thanks again for watching. We will catch you next time.